The art gallery on Fifth Avenue was a place that prided itself on exclusivity. Behind its glass walls, masterpieces hung like jewels against white canvases of plaster, illuminated by soft lights that lent every brushstroke an air of reverence. For the wealthy elite, the gallery was a shrine, a place where art was less about creativity and more about status. On that particular evening, the room pulsed with hushed conversations, clinking champagne glasses, and laughter that sounded rehearsed, like lines from a script only the rich and polished knew by heart. When the door opened, the laughter dimmed, replaced by a silence sharp enough to draw eyes toward the entrance. Into the warm, glittering space stepped an elderly black couple. The man, tall despite his age, leaned slightly on a polished wooden cane. His suit was clean, tailored, though a bit worn at the cuffs. His hair, white as frost, curled neatly at his temples. The woman by his side wore a long navy dress with delicate pearl earrings. She carried herself with elegance, her back straight, her hands folded neatly over a modest clutch. Her eyes, calm, proud, yet searching, swept the gallery as if she had walked those floors 1,000 times before. But the crowd did not see dignity. They saw strangers, outsiders, intruders. A woman near the champagne table whispered, not quietly enough, "They must have wandered into the wrong event." A man laughed softly as though the comment were a clever joke. "Or maybe they're lost tourists. They look like they belong in a church pew, not an art gallery." The words pricked the air like needles, landing in the ears of the couple. The man's hand tensed on his cane, but he did not respond. The woman glanced briefly at him, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile, urging patience. They began walking slowly down the hall, pausing at each painting. While others sipped champagne and gossiped about the artist's bold use of light, or the value these pieces will fetch in 5 years, the elderly couple looked closer. They leaned in to study brushstrokes. They spoke softly to each other, and once in a while the man's eyes glimmered with recognition, like he was remembering a story the rest of the world had forgotten. But not everyone in the room was content to merely whisper. A young gallery assistant, hair slicked back and wearing a name tag that screamed "intern," approached them with a fixed smile. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone dipped in false politeness. "This is a private event. Do you have an invitation?" The man lifted his head slowly, meeting the boy's eyes with calm intensity. His voice, deep and steady, carried across the chatter. "Do I need one?" The assistant blinked, caught off guard. "Well, yes, this is a showing for collectors and patrons. It's exclusive." The woman's voice, soft but edged with iron, slid into the silence. "We know exactly where we are. We came to see the art. Isn't that what a gallery is for?" The assistant shifted uncomfortably. The whispers grew louder. A group of women, pearls glittering against their necks, smirked behind their glasses. One of them murmured, "How quaint. They think it's public." Another laughed, "It's always the same. Some people just don't understand culture." The couple walked past, unfazed by the sneers, until a louder voice stopped them in their tracks. "Excuse me," said a tall man in a tailored gray suit. His expression was dripping with irritation. "I don't mean to be rude, but you can't just stroll into private events like this. These pieces are priceless, and the people here, well, we've invested a great deal." The elderly man studied him quietly, then asked, "And what exactly have you invested in, sir? The art, or the appearance of being near it?" The room froze for a moment. Some chuckled awkwardly, others gasped. The tall man scoffed. "I don't know what game you're playing, old man, but this isn't your kind of place. Maybe there's a community center downtown more appropriate." The words sliced the air. Several people laughed openly this time, their cruelty unchecked. The elderly woman drew in a slow breath, her fingers tightening on her clutch. Her husband placed a hand gently over hers, steadying her. He leaned closer, murmuring something only she could hear, and she nodded, a small fire kindling in her eyes. They continued their slow walk around the gallery. Each time they paused before a painting, the murmurs grew. Some mocked their clothes, some scoffed at their age.
Others whispered thinly veiled remarks about outsiders who would never understand art. But the couple said nothing. They let the ridicule bounce off them like raindrops on stone. They paused before a large abstract piece. Blinding streaks of white slashed across a sea of crimson. The elderly man's lips curved faintly upward. "Do you see it?" he whispered to his wife. She studied it carefully, then nodded. Yes, the same anguish, the same hand. He's still chasing the shadows of his past. The young assistant, lingering near them like a watchdog, raised his brow. You know this artist?" The elderly man chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that startled those nearby. "Know him? We knew him when his canvases were drying in a basement, when he couldn't sell a painting for the cost of the frame. He was a boy then, frightened of the world. He brought us his work to critique, week after week. We told him to keep painting, and he did." The assistant stared. He laughed nervously, thinking it must be a lie, a senile fantasy. "That's a nice story." But the couple moved on, stopping before another painting, this one bursting with swirling colors. The woman's voice dropped low, almost trembling. "That one. I remember when he showed us the sketch. He said it was about freedom. Do you remember, James?" "I do. I remember every word." The crowd was growing restless. The whispers had transformed into open mockery. Some guests pulled out their phones, snapping pictures of the couple as if they were some sort of sideshow. Others shook their heads in disapproval, muttering about how standards are slipping. It was then that the gallery's manager, a tall woman in black with a clipboard tucked under her arm, appeared. She smiled, brittle and insincere, as she approached the couple. "Good evening," she said smoothly. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This is a private collector's preview. Unless your names are on the guest list, I'll have to ask you to leave." The elderly man's eyes narrowed slightly. "And if we are on the list?" She blinked. "You're not." "How do you know?" he asked calmly. Her smile faltered. "Well, because—" But before she could finish, a hush swept over the room. A man in a dark blue suit had entered through the side door, his silver hair slicked back, his presence commanding instant respect. He was the evening's host, the face of the gallery's board, and one of the wealthiest art patrons in the city. "Ah," he said, spotting the elderly couple. His face lit up with surprise, and something deeper, relief even, gratitude. He strode quickly across the floor, ignoring the murmurs, ignoring the confused looks from his fellow patrons. When he reached them, he extended his hands with reverence and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Ellington, you're here. I was hoping you'd come tonight." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The same people who had mocked, sneered, and laughed now exchanged looks of panic and disbelief. The tall man in the gray suit stammered, You know them?" The patron turned slowly, his expression icy. "Know them? Without them, this gallery wouldn't exist. You're standing in their legacy. Every wall, every frame, every light, it's here because of them." The room went silent. Glasses trembled in hands. Someone coughed nervously. The elderly man lifted his chin. His voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. "You all mocked us as though we were strangers, outsiders. But the truth is simple. This gallery belongs to us. We own it. And every painting you pretended to understand was chosen, curated, and displayed by our hands."
The silence was deafening. Faces turned pale, smirks vanished, the arrogance dissolved into humiliation. And for the first time that evening, the couple smiled, not with bitterness, but with the quiet triumph of those who had endured storms before and always walked away unbroken.
The gallery that had moments earlier been alive with shallow laughter now felt like a church after an earthquake. Walls intact, but the air unsettled. The worshippers uneasy. The wealthy patrons, clutching their drinks, whispered excuses to themselves, searching for ways to disguise their shame. The elderly man, James Ellington, stood tall despite the cane in his grip. His wife, Evelyn, matched his poise with serene grace. Their calmness in the face of ridicule was no accident. They had been tested by far crueler storms than a room of smirking socialites. James let the silence hang heavy, long enough for those who mocked him to squirm in it. "I see," he said finally, his deep voice measured, "that wealth does not purchase wisdom, nor does it guarantee respect. You all came here tonight thinking this gallery was yours to parade through. But let me tell you what it took to build this place." He turned slowly, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "When Evelyn and I bought this building 30 years ago, it was rotting brick and broken windows. No one wanted this block, this neighborhood. Crime had swallowed it whole. Banks laughed in our faces when we asked for loans, but we scraped, we saved, we mortgaged everything we owned. Evelyn worked double shifts at the hospital. I painted houses in the summer heat and shoveled snow in the winter. We poured our blood into this ground." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice like silk woven over steel. "We believed in art, not the art you brag about for its price tag, but the kind that saves lives, the kind that gives children hope. This gallery has never been about champagne receptions and shallow flattery. It's been about giving voices to those the world ignores. Every young artist we lifted up, every exhibition we hosted, it was for them, for the future." Whispers rippled through the crowd again, but now it was not laughter. It was guilt, the murmur of those caught naked in their arrogance. The gallery manager who had tried to eject them earlier flushed red, her clipboard trembling in her hands. She opened her mouth to speak, but James raised a hand to silence her. "Don't bother," he said. "You showed us exactly who you are." The wealthy man in the gray suit, the one who had sneered about community centers, stepped forward with forced politeness. "Well, Mr. Ellington, Mrs. Ellington, I think we can all agree this was simply a misunderstanding. We didn't know." James' laugh thundered through the hall, low and sharp. "Didn't know or didn't care? You saw two elderly black faces and decided we didn't belong. That's not ignorance, that's arrogance. That's prejudice wrapped in pearls and silk ties." The man faltered, his cheeks burning. The gallery patron, the silver-haired man in the blue suit, turned on the crowd with fury. "You fools! Do you realize what you've done? These two built the foundation you stand on. Every artist in this gallery tonight owes them a debt. Every penny you spend here enriches their vision. And you mocked them." A woman in diamonds muttered weakly, "We didn't mean—" Evelyn's voice cut through her apology like glass. "You meant every word. But we don't need apologies. We've spent a lifetime listening to people's excuses for cruelty. We are not interested in your guilt." The silence was suffocating now. Heads hung low. Some tried to sip their champagne, as if alcohol could wash down shame. And then James' tone shifted, colder, sharper. "But there will be consequences." He tapped his cane once on the marble floor. The sound echoed. "You came here tonight as guests, but from this moment forward, many of you will not step foot in this gallery again. We decide who enters. We decide who belongs. And those who cannot see past the color of our skin, those who mocked our presence, they have no place in this sanctuary of art.
Gasps broke out. Some protested. A woman shrieked, "You can't do that!" But Evelyn simply smiled. "Oh, we can, and we will." The silver-haired patron nodded fiercely. "Their word is final. This gallery is theirs. If they say you're banned, you're banned." The panic was delicious to watch. Men who had strutted in with arrogance now looked like boys caught stealing candy. Women who had laughed minutes earlier clutched their pearls as if strangled by them. James wasn't finished. He walked slowly to the center of the room, leaning on his cane, commanding all eyes. Do you know what it feels like to work your whole life, to build something out of nothing, only to be told you don't belong in the house you built? Tonight, you tasted a sliver of that feeling. And it unsettled you, didn't it? Good. Remember that. He paused, and then turned to Evelyn. "Shall we tell them?" Her lips curved into a sly smile. "Oh yes, let's." Together, they faced the crowd. Evelyn's voice rang clear. "We are expanding. In 2 months, a new wing will open in this gallery. It will not be for the wealthy elite who see art as an investment portfolio. It will be for the children of this city, for young artists who could never dream of stepping into a room like this. It will be free to them. They will paint, they will sculpt, they will write, and their work will hang on these very walls." The shock rippled again, but this time, among the servers and assistants, there were smiles, quiet ones, hidden behind trays and uniforms. Hope glimmered in the eyes of those who had always felt invisible in such spaces. James wasn't finished. He walked slowly to the center of the room, leaning on his cane, commanding all eyes. Do you know what it feels like to work your whole life, to build something out of nothing, only to be told you don't belong in the house you built? Tonight, you tasted a sliver of that feeling. And it unsettled you, didn't it? Good. Remember that. He paused, then turned to Evelyn. "Shall we tell them?" Her lips curved into a sly smile. "Oh yes, let's." Together they faced the crowd. Evelyn's voice rang clear. "We are expanding. In 2 months, a new wing will open in this gallery. It will not be for the wealthy elite who see art as an investment portfolio. It will be for the children of this city, for young artists who could never dream of stepping into a room like this. It will be free to them. They will paint, they will sculpt, they will write, and their work will hang on these very walls." The shock rippled again, but this time, among the servers and assistants, there were smiles, quiet ones, hidden behind trays and uniforms. Hope glimmered in the eyes of those who had always felt invisible in such spaces. James finished it. And as for tonight's display, every piece you see here will remain on these walls, but next to them, plaques will be added. Those plaques will tell the stories of the artists, their struggles, and their rise, and it will remind visitors who gave them their first chance. We built this gallery to honor truth, and tonight, the truth is that you tried to strip us of our dignity, but instead you stripped yourselves of yours. The room erupted, not in applause, but in silence so deep it was almost painful. Some guests slipped quietly toward the door, eager to escape the humiliation. Others stood frozen, unwilling to meet the couple's eyes. But a handful lingered. Young artists, assistants, servers. They looked at James and Evelyn with awe. For them, this was not just a moment of revenge, it was liberation. Proof that the world could still be bent, even slightly, toward justice. As the crowd thinned, Evelyn reached for her husband's hand. He squeezed it gently. "They tried," she murmured. "Yes," James said softly, "and they failed." The silver-haired patron approached once more, bowing his head slightly. "Forgive them," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Evelyn shook her head. "Forgiveness isn't ours to give tonight. They'll have to reckon with themselves." And with that, the Ellingtons walked slowly down the gallery hall, past the paintings they had nurtured, past the whispers that had once ridiculed them. But now, the whispers followed them with reverence, not mockery. Outside, the night air was crisp.
The city hummed with life. Evelyn looked at James, her eyes reflecting the glow of streetlights. "Do you think they'll learn?" she asked. James smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but even if they don't, the children will, and that's all that matters." They stepped into the night, leaving behind a room of trembling egos and shattered arrogance. Behind them, in the gallery that bore their name, though few had noticed it until now, the lights glowed brighter, as if the walls themselves were proud. And somewhere deep inside, among the canvases and colors, justice had been painted in strokes bold enough to last forever.